Hey YouTubers. So I've been doing a couple of rides on the XS and I'm loving it. It's a lot of fun. I don't know what it is. It just brings me back to the day, I guess. I like my old KZ750 I had. That was just, I don't know. I love the position of this bike, the riding. I like the track style bars. It just the position's comfortable. It's just a nice bike to take out. I could do a good 50, 60 mile ride and I'm loving it. But I guess what I wanted to do is just throw out some final thoughts, maybe some things that I would do differently, and some things that I did that, mm, I mean, they don't kill the function of the bike. But first I can say, I've been riding modern bikes for a long time and going back to a, you know, pre-dinosaur era motorcycle. It's not pre-dinosaur, I'd say, but you know what I'm saying. Riding something like that, fuel injected, ABS brakes, and then jumping on this, it's an adjustment. You're not just gonna, the first few miles is just like, whoa, I remember you now. I gotta go a little slower, give myself a little more distance between people. But one thing that I probably would not have done now that I'm looking back, I wouldn't have shaved the fork. I would have kept the other mount for the other caliper, and I would have put a dual front brake on this just for that little bit of extra stopping power. And now that I'm looking at it, another thing, the only reason I really kept the mags, and they kind of grew on me, I like them. The bike came with mags, so you know, finding a pair maybe used that are fairly in decent shape, but you're looking at a good investment upgrading from mags to spokes. They look great, probably remove a lot of spinning weight. This the this I've noticed that this bike is not very flickable. Like you got a lot of rotating mass here. That's the other thing. Well, I'm going to get into between the mag and the tire. I didn't do my due justice in investigating tires and size. I went out and I bought I believe this is a 110 90. I can't remember. I believe, yes, it's a 110 90. So again, I don't understand that. I didn't understand the ratios between the diameter of the tire, the width of the tire, and the tire rim size. So the 110/90 is actually a ratio of between the width of the tire and the height of the tire off the rim. I should have went with like a 110, maybe 80. I'm not even sure if that exists, or a 110/70, and that would have made a much lower profile tire, which would have reduced a little bit of diameter, which actually does affect my speedo. Is another problem. I'm off by maybe 5 to 8 miles per hour right now because this tire's pretty high. It just clears the inside of the fender. But I would have done more investigating in tires. The other thing, these Pirelli root tires are more of a touring tire. And this bike, now that I've shaved everything off of it, is not very heavy. So these tires, I want to say, are probably more for a 5 to, maybe even 700 or 800 pound motorcycle. They're just not a real soft rubber. They're great for, you're going to get a ton of life out of them, but I just find if I get on the brake a little too hard in the rear, it'll break free on me a little bit. There's not enough weight back there for it. I'm thinking, my personal opinion. So I would went more with a probably more of a sport tire, like a Metzler or something, or a Dunlop. That's one thing another thing I would have changed. Um, I did end up changing that rear brake light and plate mount. I like this way nicer. It flows off the back of the bike now instead of coming up like a Tyrannosaurus neck head way up here. My key placement also, having it be on your clutch side behind you when you're sitting on the bike. If you've been riding one of these things and you know how finicky the clutch can be all the time, another thing I'll get into in a second. Sometimes my clutch is being a dink and it's getting all frozen up because it's warmer and it's got on of adjustment, and I have to hold the clutch when I'm stopping, and I can't get into neutral because it's shifting hard because the clutch is hanging up, and you know, it's kind of irritating. So then I have to grab the clutch with my right hand while I shut off the bike with my left hand. So it's a nice hiding location. Other than that, it was easy to, add a nice bracket into the frame there, so you can just pop your ignition in there. Plus all my wiring is up underneath my cowl here, so it was really easy to wire into the whole ignition set. But that was an oversight. I probably would have figured out a way to mount it up where it'd be more accessible, so I could just click the bike off while sitting right on the seat without having to do the juggling thing, grabbing the clutch. But do take your time. The clutch, I put a new clutch pack in this when I built the motor. I was able to, when I first built this bike, I wasn't able to get the, I'll call that the actuator. I've had a video on that as well. I wasn't able to buy one online. They weren't available. And finally, I just bought a brand new one, because the two I had from the two bikes I had bought were both pretty worn out. I put the best one I had in there, but I couldn't get it adjusted. And you need to get great adjustment on this. There is very little room for error either way on this. You're either going to have a slipping clutch because you have it adjusted too tight, or you're going to have a clutch that no matter how hard you pull that clutch in, you're never going to disengage the clutch, and it makes shifting almost impossible trying to find neutral. It'll shift fine when you're riding. You will have no problem shifting, but finding neutral, to pull up to a gas station or come to a stoplight and you just want to pop it in neutral for a second while you're, getting the blood flowing in your fingers again. Yeah, if your clutch is sticking, don't even. So pay attention. Oh, that was one thing I did end up doing, is rerouting my clutch cable. The way I had it routed on the frame underneath the tank was a little too steep of a bend coming to it. So I had to figure out a way to, I had the tank off a little while ago, and I figured out a way to re-zip tie it so that it was more of a swooping flow underneath there instead of being a tight bend coming down the frame. That gave me a good advancement on my clutch. Just spend the money, buy a new actuator and adjuster. It's like 60 or 70 bucks at Mike's SX. You just don't even waste your time. Get a new cable. It's going to stretch in on you, but just put the new cable on there. And then, make sure you have plenty of adjustment up here. And what I found is, it's really kind of annoying. When I first start this bike, sometimes my clutch will be tight because everything's cold. And I kick this bike, which I'll get into in a second. And I have maybe 1-2 kicks to start it up on a cold kick. But when it's cold, sometimes this clutch, like right now, it's pulling already. But when this thing is warm, this won't start pulling until about a 1/4 inch out. You get there's a lot of expansion and contraction in this motor when it goes from warm to hot, and it's almost finding a good adjustment for cold and then riding once it gets warmed up, really difficult. So I've looked into hydraulic setups online. I haven't seen anybody that's done one that meets my expectations aesthetically. I've seen where they put the slave on the outside of the case here, the slave cylinder, master cylinder, whatever. No, that's a slave cylinder. And it sticks out off the side here. And I don't know, I don't like that. And then you got the hydraulic hose will be coming right off the side of this, and it just doesn't look clean to me. I don't like it. If there was a way to do it inside the case, it would be great, but this clutch is probably one of the most annoying things about this whole thing. If they had done a better clutch setup, it would have been great. The other thing I would have investigated more, suspension. These were mostly, I bought these because I liked the black and the red to match the aesthetics of the bike. But, you know, after you shave all the weight off of these and you do this type of a setup, you're taking quite a bit of weight off this bike. This bike, I mean, somewhere around the 400-pound range, maybe a little less. Rides, and this is with them adjusted all the way to the soft as it'll go. And it's still, sometimes if I'm on, if you're just hitting the little whoopties on a highway, they'll absorb that real nice and smooth. But if you hit a good dinger in the road, man, it goes right up to your spine. There's just the dampening is just hard. If you hit a good pothole or anything on these, man, it goes boom right up into your spine. So spending the money on the suspension definitely is a great investment if you want to ride. If you actually want to ride this bike. Another thing I overlooked, I took this out originally, this inner fender, for looks. I was like, I don't really like it. I ended up popping it back in, and I just zip tied it. I wish I had left the hardware on the frame to remount this in, but it's kind of a one and done thing. I mean, it's not a huge deal. I just took some zip ties, two on that side, one on this side, and then the upper part of it's held in by the inside fender in the back. So it ain't going nowhere. But without this, I noticed I was getting dirt, all kinds of road grime built up on the back of the motor. On the back of my pods, we're getting all nasty from dirt and dust. Just not a good thing. I really would not remove the hardware for this. And it's black, you hardly ever see it. I don't really think you'll notice it going down the road, and it does its job. It really is keeping all the dirt out of your pods, the dirt off the back of your motor. It just keeps your bike clean. Plus, if you ever ride in the rain, it's gonna make a mess of your pods. But I think, I love these exhaust systems from Mike's SS. They just sounds. Someday I think I'm gonna try to. I have a mount for my phone. I just haven't had enough cojones to. It just, when the case is on my phone and this thing's vibrating around, it's just. This is it's a nice. It's actually really nicely designed, and it feels like a nice piece just with the vibration on my bars. I can't even remember the name of the brand. I'll have to look that up if you guys are interested in that. But it's got a special case that you can buy for just about any phone you got, and it just spins and clips on either 90 or this way. But I've been a little leery about throwing my phone on there because I just picture it going dunk and down the road behind me. The battery choice I made, you can't see it, it's under here. I got the dog barking, sorry. But I have a lithium Deltram battery, and it does not hold charge very well. I mean, it does its job, but it's been on the charger more than it's been in the bike, I think. And that's just been right from the get-go. But it took up the least amount of space, which was so. Honestly, this bike starts so easy with the kickstart. I think I would have just gone with the battery elimination and just got away with and probably just pulled the starter off of this altogether if you wanted to remove more weight. But other than that, if you see anything else you have questions about, man, sorry, my daughter's going crazy upstairs. But jetting these was a trick. I mean, I spent a lot of miles on the road getting the jetting right, and then my sprocketing right I have a high lift cam from Mike's SS. It's the performance cam. I can't remember. It's like a 440. I don't remember. And I went with the 1mm bigger valves. And I never rode this prior to rebuilding it, but it just revs freely. And once it gets up to rev, it just wants to keep cruising. Like, it's kind of crazy. That extra air just was, I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I don't really have anything to compare it to because I've never ridden another one of these before in a stock condition. But once this bike comes up to speed, I could literally blast as high up in revs as I can go, and I can let off the throttle on this thing, and it doesn't. It's not like a. It doesn't whoa like come bogging right back down. It just wants to keep going. I could let go to the throttle and just start shifting up and grab the throttle again and go. It just keeps revving. It's crazy. It just revs so free. It's kind of fun. It's a fun bike. But I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, you can't tune pods on." These are tuned great. This bike, it took me a long time. I ended up going with the biggest jet that I could. It's at the largest jetting size that you can put in here between the changes. Oh, and my heads are ported and polished. I had Edgar machine do that, so it just a little bit of tuning. It took me a lot of trial and error, going for a ride, coming back, checking plugs, seeing if they're running too rich, too lean. And then the sprocketing, that was another trick, was, figuring out once I got it running good, it took me quite a while. I forget, I think I ended up going with the smallest on the rear and the largest in the front that you can get. I'm trying to remember how many teeth that is, but I'd have to look up through the paperwork where I bought it. But once I found out where it's happy, I can actually, because when I first started with the stock sprocket that I had, I went with the same size that was on their stock. And man, I couldn't get out of 40, 45, 50 miles an hour. This thing was like pegging out. So it took me a while to get these so I could get it up to a highway speed and where it was happy and not bogging down. But, that's pretty much it. The biggest changes, I would have paid more attention to my tires. I would not have gone with a touring tire for a touring motorcycle. I would have gone something more sporty like a Metzler sport tire, something that's a little more grippy, maybe even a dual compound like these. But I can say that this tire has broke loose on me coming around corners, getting on it a little bit. It scares the poop out of me sometimes, and I've learned to now I have to go really easy going into corners. This thing will start bailing out sideways on me real quick with this tire. I don't know if it's the tire or just because it's got more power. I don't know. Man, that yellow pollen from yesterday was crazy. It was insane how much pollen was flying through the air. But yeah, so I would go with more of a sport tire than a touring tire if you're going to remove this much weight. Oh, the other thing, my center stand, I know they're fat, they're ugly, and they weigh so much, and it's a lot of steel. But when you're working on this thing, it's so convenient to throw a bike up on its center stand. Plus, if this thing's sitting in the winter, get your bike off the tires so you don't end up with flat spots or anything like that. I kind of regret ripping the center stand off of this. So, but other than that, I love this bike though. It's so much fun. It's a blast to ride. It's just really fun. Take this out for a good little hour rip and I feel so much. It's like mental therapy. I don't know. But if you have any questions, don't feel free to hit me up. But these are my personal final thoughts on my own machine and how I built this. But things I've overlooked, things I would have changed, not a whole lot. I really love the bike, but um, that's about it, man. I hope you guys are out having fun with your projects or out riding your bike and staying safe. All right? Keep the shiny side up. Have a good night. Bye.